Welcome to a video about cyclical polar axis shift, which I like to call the Isaiah shift. It's not biblical except in name, but these three verses motivated me to tackle the study and try to understand it and what would cause such a description. So here's the description. Isaiah 24 verse 1. Behold, the Lord maketh the earth empty, and maketh it waste, and turneth it upside down, and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof. 19. The earth is utterly broken down, the earth is clean dissolved, the earth is moved exceedingly. 20. The earth shall rule to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage. So we have lots of moves, lots of water. So let's see exactly how and why this happens. Alrighty, here you are here on Earth, and we spin around once every day. That's 24 hours, how long it takes us to spin around. The moon goes around the Earth every 28 days, and also happens to revolve once every 28 days, which is why the same side of the moon always faces us. So we know we're on Earth, we know the moon goes around us, we know we're going through the solar system. That takes 365 and a quarter days for us to go through the solar system. So here we got Jupiter and moon, Saturn, and here you are right there on Earth and your sun, and notice we have a couple things that are on different orbital paths than the rest of us, and then we got this kind of a band of stuff floating in here. Who knows what that is? And it takes us 1 year to go around the sun. So our solar system is part of the Milky Way galaxy. Thought something happened to the camera here. The Milky Way galaxy. So here you are here in the Milky Way, and I like this picture because it shows from above. It shows that it's swirling, and at the top they show the side view. It's a plane. It's a plane. Something is flattening it from both sides to make it a disc. So here's another picture. We're going to set it up so the y-axis is through the center and through the bottom, right through the middle of the disc in the center. And we know that we have some kind of swirl in here going on because you can see it coming out. And the XC plane has to have something squashing it like a disc. What do we got? We got gravity. We got gravity from the top pushing down and gravity from the bottom pushing up. It would be like a pendulum turned sideways. Except it's this way, and you have gravity on both sides, and where that plane comes together, this might be what that looks like. Where that plane comes together, what happens if you squish a water balloon? It squirts out equally in all directions. So what those two gravitational forces is, they're producing a powerful gravitational force plane that's squirting out from the center in all directions. If you were looking down and that's the center, it would be going in all directions like a water balloon, squishing a water balloon. I don't know exactly what the curve looks like for the gravity top and bottom, but it has to be equal and opposite. And it's producing an axial force, and we already know that there's a rotational force involved too. So we have an axial force pushing everything out, and we have a rotational force in there too. So it's illogical to think that we could stay right in the middle of that negative gravity, positive gravity line, because that would be like trying to balance a cue ball on a razor blade, right? Not going to happen. Besides that, you would be accelerating forever, and you would become unstable or crash into something. So what's happening? This is the y-axis from the center. I don't know how far out we are. Well, we're out here somewhere. Here you are, here and here. So this is way in, but this is what the path has to look like. Sometimes we're on the positive side, and sometimes we're on the negative side. So this is our up and down as we're going out in this plane. I've got it plotted right to left. I don't really know where we are and where we would be in the solar system, but every time we pass through this plane, it's like skipping a ball off a record. It creates a force. So let's get to that. Okay, so if one time going through from the bottom and then the bottom again, that would be a galactic year. That's a complete cycle of our solar system going through the universe, solar system, Earth. Here, and then there's an Isaiah shift every time we cross through. And let's look at that real close. So we have, this is time and the XZ plane. So, you have your gravities producing that force. When the Earth comes through, when it first starts going through and hits this side, it starts spinning it this way as it continues through this path. Now, I don't know if we're going through this way or if we're going through that way. That's why there's a question mark here. But we're going through one way or another. I don't know if we're on top or the bottom. And I don't really know where north is going to be relative to this plane. But to make it simple, we're going to put north in the plus direction here. So now it started us spinning clockwise or counterclockwise in the top. So we're spinning this way. Where's north? Where's our old rotational axis? Who knows? Who knows? So the top was the 2. It pushed us 2. And then this one, what's that force doing? It's pushing right on the Earth. Right on the Earth. So that's the moved exceedingly part. And then after all the rotational, as soon as we get to the center, that's the fastest we'll be spinning in the counterclockwise direction in this example. That's the fastest. And then once we pass through center, that force is gonna act on the other side. On the other side of the Earth and reverse that force. Okay? So when we get done, even though the force spinning us this way is the same as the force spinning us that way, the axis, the old axis, isn't the same as the new axis once we get through here and settle down because of gyroscopic precession. So over here on the right, 2 equal fro, they're equal and opposite in force. The shift is caused by gyroscopic precession due to the rotation of the Earth during this period. As we're going through, we're still spinning. And you know what it's like trying to push a top. You push it this way and it goes that way. Gyroscopic precession, the force is always going to be in the same direction, so it's accumulative. Okay, what kind of evidence do we have that supports cyclical polar axis shifts? We have the Curie-Reese map, which scientists believe was drawn 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. And it shows Antarctica partially ice-free between South America and Africa. They got all these harbors and stuff drawn. They're under 1.5 miles of ice right now. How did humans map that? It was easy. 6,000 to 1,000 years ago when that map was drawn, the Earth was spinning about a different axis, so that part of Antarctica was ice-free. The Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon wasn't cut by the Colorado River constantly flowing toward the Pacific because Colorado River starts 2,000 feet below the rim of the Grand Canyon. So the Grand Canyon was cut by repeated differences in water heights across the Rocky Mountains, where sometimes it cut from the plain side toward the Pacific, and sometimes it cut from the Pacific toward the plain side, whichever had the higher water. And it was caused by repeated water going one way or the other due to Isaiah shifts. You got preserved mammoths that we found that they believe were 12 to 14,000 years ago. Well, obviously the mammoths didn't live in the environment that flash froze them before they could decompose and before the predators got them. They had a sudden climate change that froze them basically in their tracks, when all of a sudden they were fat, dumb, and happy until Isaiah Shift put them on the Arctic Circle and they froze to death. Petrified trees, same thing. Petrified trees can't grow in an environment that would petrify them. If the environment didn't change, they would grow and then they would rot away like they do now. So that implies they went from fat, dumb, and happy, growing healthy, to an environment that turned them to stone. So maybe they got buried in a glacier, or the salt water, all of a sudden they were underwater due to a sea level type thing. I got lots of examples that physically support Isaiah Shift. And I'll write them up later, but that's just a couple that you can think about. Piri Reis especially tells me that there was an Isaiah Shift 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, and the preserved mammoth tells me that the one before that was 12,000 to 14,000 years ago. So one thing I forgot to do when I was going through the other charts, I wanted to kind of demonstrate what it would look like as you're coming through. So here's the Earth coming through on that path. This force is incredible gravity. It's the gravity that holds the whole Milky Way together. Incredible force. Very powerful gravitational invisible force. It's not a barrier. We'll pass through it, but while we're in it, and I do believe it takes about 2 weeks, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So as the Earth's coming through, we're spinning around. This globe doesn't spin too good. But then when we start and we hit on the bottom, it's going to start turning us. By the time we get to the middle, let's say we're upside down. When we get to the middle, as we continue through, it'll start taking us back, so then when we get all the way out, it's almost the same where it was. And I think let's say it goes 30 degrees, 10, 20, 30 degrees in that direction, we could have China is in the Arctic Circle, or China could be close to the equator. And I believe it's totally random where we end up based on where we are when we come through, and I don't know any way to calculate that. So that is the Isaiah Shift, a cyclical polar axis shift that occurs every 6,000 to 7,000 years. And I thank you for watching.